We're back over at our Lincoln renovation, and you saw in a previous episode that we self-leveled our entire concrete floor of this project, and this week we're talking about tile. Mike, what we're standing in is the kitchen area. You wanted to get done first, right?
Yeah, our cabinets are ready to be installed, so we started working in the kitchen area, and then get out of the way. Tile guys are going to start working in the living room and doing some cool details on the stairs. That's going to take them some more time. So
one of the things we were combating is that where we're standing right here is the original house, and then the addition was the slab on grade. We needed a way to bridge that. So what product are you using for the underlayment in this?
So we use the Ditra-heat-duo. The Duo has the thicker fleece backing on it to help thermally break for your floor.
Typically used for a radiant, and what that does is when you're installing this on top of a concrete slab and you have radiant cables through it, you're not actually heating up the concrete slab, you're heating up the bottom side of the tile. We're using that in kind of reverse here, right?
Yeah.
So instead, we're basically trying to prevent the coldness from coming from the slab on grade into the bottom side of the tile.
Keeps the tile warm.
Walk me through some of the installation details and some of the things we actually learned on this project, and what is important to getting that to adhere really well.
We started troweling on the normal thin set, we used all the Schluter stuff, but the self-leveler was actually sucking some of the moisture out of that thin set too quick, and we were having some bonding issues.
So we're actually drying out that thin set too fast.
Yeah.
How did we fix that?
Mixed everything up just a little bit wetter and wet down the floor beforehand.
So we're basically taking a sponge and getting that subfloor, get some
Dampen
moisture
it.
in. Yeah, so it's not sucking that, it's not looking for that moisture elsewhere, which was the thin set.
Pulling it out of the thin set too fast. But luckily there was only like, 2 or 3 sheets down. We kind of noticed like we were having some corners peeling up, and it's like, crap, what are we doing wrong? So we peeled it back up, skinned stuff off and corrected it. And now everything went down perfect.
It's important to note that the manufacturer has these recommendations as well, and in troweling that product on, they recommend it to be a wet mix, but still be able to hold the trowel. Anytime you're doing something like this, we referred right back to the manufacturer's recommendations to make sure that we were following the guidelines. From there, you're basically using some pressure to get this stuff set in the thin set and letting it dry.
Equal pressure across, and we just want to make sure that everything bonds to the subfloor. We don't want to have tiles popping later.
Of course. Now, that's the bottom side. That's a thick fleece. The top is actually a plastic, and it's a honeycomb. We posted up a small clip on Instagram, and someone had made the comment that the bond isn't actually to the plastic, it's the grid pattern or the honeycomb that's creating that bond, which is really important to make sure we fill that entirely with thin set prior to putting the tile down, right?
Yep. Yeah, if you watch, Mike has a lot of time spreading out the thin set.
There's a lot of thin set
going back and forth, mixing everything up.
So we troweled on the Ditra, but also on the backside of the tile.
Yep.
What's that called?
Butter in the backside?
Butter in the backside.
Yeah.
And that's basically making sure that we have 100% adhesion.
Full coverage, too.
Because we're also using these leveling clips. It's oftentimes considered a way to kind of combat uneven subfloor, but that's not the case here. That's not the case ever. You really want to start with a really level subfloor, and that's really just to help the 4 current corners from having any lippage.
Yeah, stay lined up, nice and perfectly flat. We don't want anybody stubbing a toe.
But you and I had made a comment about what this stuff looks like, and we keep thinking that there's a lip.
Yeah, the way the coloring in this tile is, when you get into some of these corners, I keep looking at it like, man, nope, everything's perfect, so.
So this is a 31.5 by 31.5 porcelain tile from Porcelanosa. And it has this kind of almost polished concrete look.
Yeah, it does.
We're gonna use a grout that's probably very similar to the color.
Yep.
It really gets us the industrial look we're going with the transitional kitchen that we're installing. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the job. One of the first things we did in this job was install the wine cellar.
Yep.
Now, why was that so important to install first?
You have to be able to frame around it. Installing that first, then we have to frame up to it, but that height was really dictated by the subfloor that was out here. And so we had to accommodate for, our subfloor, a little bit of self-leveler, the Ditra-heat-duo, which is a little bit thicker than normal Schluter. You're gonna have thin set in between plus the tile. So setting that is like, well, there's a lot of figuring out going on beforehand.
There's a lot of room for error. And knowing how this thing's constructed, we knew that we only had one option. We can only bring it up. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that our elevation that we were setting was going to be at basically our bare minimum. Like we would never be able to lower this back down. So if anything, we want to install it low. There's a pretty big void around the stainless steel ring in the subfloor Why is that?
It's allowed just for any little adjustments. We're going into finish now. So if we gotta just make a tiny little tweak, we can do that.
Are you gonna fill that void?
Yeah, we'll fill that void in with a non-shrink grout. We'll go from tile on against this exterior wall to across the room, run a straight edge, and then we'll just be able to bring this thing up just to hit that straight edge so we know we're running in plane with our tile. And then we'll be able to set that down, non-shrink all around it, make sure that is secure, and then we'll come in and get into the tile layout. And so when we get into that, we're actually going to start setting our tile, marking everything to the stainless steel ring around the outside, and then we're going to bring it out to have it water jet, so everything will be cut perfect around the outside of the wine cellar. And we're going to leave an 1/8 inch gap and fill that in with like a siliconized like grout that match the same color as the grout on the floor.
So that gives you the little breathing room between dissimilar materials, which would be the stainless and the porcelain.
Yeah.
I like the fact that we're gonna water jet it, because you kind of have this ability to set that machine with a certain diameter, so every piece of tile gets
It's gonna
cut
line
in the
up
same
perfect,
way.
and it'll be
not to discredit the guys behind us doing all the work, but I think it's gonna make their
human
job
error.
easier.
You're gonna have human error in it. It's like,
And I mean, we got some
let's
small
eliminate
pieces as well.
oh, it would be extremely difficult.
So another cool detail for our staircase, we went back and forth and we talked about doing wood, doing tile, how we would do the tile.
Different materials.
We end up with a really cool detail where that tile from above is gonna look as though that pattern continues all the way through that sunken living room.
Yep.
I know the guy's working on it right now, so you'll have to stay tuned for a future episode on that. We also have a really cool fireplace in the kitchen. That's gonna be a huge focal point because it's gonna be so dark compared to everything else. Yep. And then the final piece of this project is our guest bathroom. Small, but we got some really cool details. We took some inspiration from our friend Doug down in Austin, Texas, and I'm excited to see that come together. But I know that's on your back burner right now, because first thing is getting this set.
We got to get cabinets in, yeah.
As always, stay tuned for another episode. Make sure you hit the subscribe and turn on notifications so you get notified when a new episode comes out. And as always, I'm at NS Builders on Instagram.
And I'm at Mike.Hume.